everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Today's video I really didn't want to do. I really didn't feel like doing this video because I didn't want to add to the noise and give any more attention or airtime or anything like that to this subject because I find it to be so incredibly unfair, unacceptable, and just like wild and frenzied for no good reason. But at the same time, in particular with what we discuss on this channel, including the royal family, I do feel like it is a worthy discussion. So we are going to be discussing a lot of the nonsense surrounding Catherine, Princess of Wales, in terms of the media coverage and some of the journalists who I have been most surprised by their commentary. I did recently just put out a video focusing just on Catherine's iconic fashions. So if you're looking for a wholly positive, refreshing video that is literally avoiding all of this nonsense, then I will link that for you guys so you can go take a look. There are all kinds of beautiful outfits that really sent the internet into a frenzy with how fabulous they were. So that Happy Catherine video is a good watch, perhaps a good refresher after all of this craziness that's been going on. So now let's get into this terribly insensitive media campaign that has hit every corner imaginable, from the internet to mainstream media to evening talk hosts. Literally, there's no escaping this craziness. So everybody and their mama seemed to have a theory this last week and felt compelled to share it online for whatever reason, which is rude and gross. And it's especially rude and gross when it's journalists and evening talk show hosts and mainstream media. But this really comes down to two main reasons why all of this has spiraled out of control in the way that it has. First, that there's been no further information offered as to what has gone on, the specifics of her medical condition. Second, that there's been no photographs, sightings, or other updates directly from her that have met the public or the media's expectations. I recently saw, for example, Megyn Kelly and others share the sentiment that, well, she's the most famous woman in the world. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is literally the Princess of Wales. She's going to have a high level of interest. And so there's lots more upsides to this downside, and this is one of those downsides that's just part of the deal, that being a famous and well-liked figure is going to warrant a huge amount of interest in you, and you, as people have put it, drop off the face of the earth, just drop from view for 3 months would be a naive expectation that people would stay calm and normal about it. But I do not agree whatsoever. When she went on maternity leave, people didn't lose their marbles, which she has done 3 times. When she had hyperemesis or other issues during her pregnancies, people didn't freak out and do this. And while I understand the level of interest, sure, and I completely understand and am on board with people who just simply like her and care and want her to feel better coming from a genuinely good place, that's the group who, respect her privacy. This other group that wants to know more and thinks that she should be doing more, or that, signs of life, all these crazy, crazy things are just overboard. Medical leave is medical leave. It's as simple as that. She's been on medical leave before, people, and she's been out of sight before. It's fine. There's nothing going on that people should be acting this way. It's become mean-spirited and baseless. There's terrible comments about their marriage that is just beyond screwed up, especially at this time where she's already in a somewhat vulnerable state, having gone through a physical health issue. She doesn't need people bringing in her personal life, just fabricating stories about her marriage or about William or their home life or anything like that. That is where the line is. That is not part of the deal of being a public figure and the most famous woman in the world. Those things are not part of the deal. It's a medical leave, and nobody deserves every facet of their personal life to be dissected or under fire just because they're on medical leave. How insensitive can people get? It's crazy. We're definitely not strangers to the fact that the internet gets weird really quickly, but to have those mainstream media people or bigger news reporters who have more status, so to speak, going beyond the realm of medical leave and discussing it in the parameters of that fact and truth is what's not okay. There are so many good, valid, and smart reasons that make total sense, are not nefarious, and perfectly reasonable to keep her information private and to not bother her while she's on medical leave for things like making a video to let people know you're okay. So let's go over some of those good reasons, shall we? Because apparently it needs to be said. They include, but are not limited to, the fact that this could be something that had an emotional impact as well as physical. I've touched on this before, but it seems like a lot of people just forget the fact that whatever happened with her medically, it could very well be something that was emotionally heavy, sad, tragic, and or traumatizing. It could involve some degree of grief. It could involve very real grief, and it could be something devastating. So protecting somebody's privacy with that can really help in their emotional and mental health recovery from some sort of situation in that realm. If that were to be the case, it very much makes sense to keep it private and to not bother her. It also could be some sort of embarrassing issue. If you think kids can come up with bad nicknames, the tabloids are way more savage. Nobody wants to be the face of some sort of embarrassing issue when it comes to any part of the digestive system. And for those who would argue that it could help others, do not be silly. Somebody with that high profile simply does not deserve to have to be forever connected with some sort of issue that could be seen as embarrassing. A third reason why it makes sense to keep this private and leave her alone is that it could have been a surprise. Oftentimes with surgery, they have a best case scenario, it's shorter amount of time, shorter, easier recovery. Worst case scenario, it's going to be a much longer, much bigger recovery. Perhaps something like that happened because we didn't hear about it until after her surgery had occurred. So there's a chance that there was some sort of a complication or just simply things ended up being not as quick to recover as they had hoped. That element could have been a surprise, which could be a startling and disappointing situation. Again, that is worth keeping private to allow the person to come to grips with the fact that they have a much longer, more difficult recovery ahead than they had hoped for. Yet another reason is that anything that could potentially be criticized in any way or stir up any sort of controversy. If any element of her treatment, her diagnosis, the surgery, and the recovery had any element to it that could be perceived as controversial in any way, shape, or form, it's a smart move to keep it private, because while you're recovering, the last thing you need is to know that there's arguing or bickering or people criticizing you for the very difficult medical choices that you had to make. Fifth reason is that it could have had longer term implications, perhaps something that required a little bit of ongoing treatment or monitoring, or an ongoing limited activity, frequent follow-ups after the fact, or perhaps certain activities will be limited for a very long time. I can relate to this one. After I injured my back the first time, it was a horseback riding accident. Having to come to terms with the fact that I probably will never again be able to ride seemed like a really big pill to swallow at first. Anybody who's gone through something similar knows that it can be heartbreaking. Having something where you're faced with perhaps for the rest of your life you have to be careful about this or that, or you're not able to do certain activities, or have to go in for frequent monitoring or help with a medical condition forever more, or even just have to be on medication forever more, can be really difficult to deal with and come to terms with. That alone can have a level of grief for the reality you previously held. So people need time to cope with that, not endless speculation. He also has children who do not need to see or hear any media coverage on this subject for lots of reasons. One thing that we can count on is the media taking a tidbit of info and running away with it, going super overboard, and suddenly the story has a life of its own and it can be morphed into alarming headlines. That alone warrants no comments, just to be able to protect their children from potentially seeing such things that have been exaggerated or dramatized in order for the publications to make a few extra bucks. And furthermore, for all we know, it could have been something much less serious from a medical standpoint, but it was a good opportunity to also take a bit of a break when it comes to mental and emotional well-being. Perhaps it was something more simple and routine and the surgery went off without a hitch and there were no complications. But because she's the future Queen of England and has 3 little ones at home, she was kept at the hospital for longer simply to ensure she had the bed rest that she needed. And the time off duties perhaps was extended to serve as a much needed and well-deserved break for such a difficult time, both for physical recovery, but also for mental recovery. Remember all the back-to-back assaults that Catherine has endured the last few years. They have been relentless, and in such case, having that much time off, if it were a slightly less serious medical issue or something more routine where most normal people would be back to work much sooner than 3 months, she would be criticized for not returning sooner. She would have more explaining to do and more questions asked, and criticisms leveled at her that are not deserved. So that would completely defeat the purpose of taking a little extra time, more time than physically necessary, technically speaking, but to extend it a bit to give a little bit of that mental and emotional sort of break that I could totally see she needing. We don't know what it was, but we do know that any of those 7 possibilities make way more sense and rely on the facts. Those things carry a much greater probability of being true than literally anything else I have seen or read or come out of somebody's mouth in the last few weeks. These conspiracy theories and wild accusations are completely out of hand. The media thrives on drama, that's no secret. And clickbait. It sells via clickbait, and I'm no stranger to it. I make silly clickbait thumbnails for my videos all the time. It's just how media industry works. But peddling things that are so far removed from the facts and any realm of reality is totally wrong. Honestly, this last week, I was really shocked to see so many respected journalists and TV hosts and other commentators dip their toes or even plunge headfirst into the fray of frenzied falsehoods and wildly fabricated conspiracies. It's shameful. And while some of it is spurred on by genuine curiosity and bad timing, adding an element here, it's really, when it comes to the news organizations, down to money. Say it again. These people didn't do this when she was on maternity leave. We didn't have Piers Morgan or Megyn Kelly or Stephen Colbert or any of these people doing stuff like this when she was on medical leave during her pregnancies, but we have it now. It's not fair. These people are fueling it by taking these wild theories mainstream rather than putting their foot down and saying, this woman is on medical leave. Do not cross this line. No matter what, when she comes back, all of this is going to be like water under the bridge anyway. The media also moves super fast. And people seem to forget things really quickly. Media especially has a very, very short memory, alarmingly short memory. So when she does come back within a week or so, everybody's going to move on from it and it won't matter anymore. And because that's how the media cycle works in such a fast-paced way, it further contributes to why there have been fewer updates and no need to explain anything else. Because the media is going to do what the media does. The public's going to do what they're going to do. When she comes back, it won't matter. People forget and move on. And it's like it never happened. But moving on to the second issue, which was that there's been no updates or pictures up to par when it comes to the public or the media's expectations. Was the edited photo bad timing? Yes, obviously. Was it blown out of proportion? Extraordinarily so, yes. Here's what I think happened. I think that Catherine was feeling better, and she and William decided to take a picture on a whim. And then she decided to edit it and get it out in time for Mother's Day on Instagram. Somewhere along the line, there was a breakdown of communication, and it got put out as a press release, which is what the crux of the issue is. We'll circle back to why that matters in a moment, but I think obviously there's nothing nefarious going on. Obviously it was just a mistake, but I think that it was probably just more of a last minute choice. Nobody was going to ask her to do a formal portrait for Mother's Day. Nobody was going to come to her and bother her on medical leave. And so she happened to be like, oh, Sunday's Mother's Day. I always put out a picture, and said to William, let's take a picture. Catherine is one of the most popular, sometimes polling as the most popular royal. Her approval ratings are consistently high. She sells papers. People love her. She's also clearly very loyal to the firm, to her family, to her in-laws, to the monarchy. She's hardly put a foot wrong ever. She's had 3 children and has been a working royal throughout that time. She clearly has good relationships with many of her in-laws and fellow royal family members. She's worked hard for years and done good work. The Early Years Initiative is phenomenal. Also delivers excellent press, along with every engagement that she attends or joins or participates in, so she's plainly a big asset to the royal family. Also, in recent years, she has suffered malicious falsehoods and attacks from the likes of Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and Omid Scobie that hit a pinnacle just before the holidays. So when this medical issue arose for her, I think that Prince William and King Charles and perhaps the royal staff and others wanted to repay her the loyalty and respect and kindness that she has shown them and the monarchy over the years. They wanted her to take as long as she needed, as long as she wanted, 3 months and then some if she wants, because she needed it, because she deserved it. And they wanted her to not be bothered during that time. They wanted her to rest and recuperate and recharge and be left alone. To say she's earned it is an understatement, because if they had come to her with these things and been like, hey, could we do a little video? Could we have you put out a statement? Could we do some sort of message? She would have said yes, I'm sure. But they didn't want her to. They wanted her to actually take the break and actually get better and actually have some of that mental and emotional recuperation as well. And it's not because she's a pushover or will do whatever they say, but because she has a sense of duty. That's been well demonstrated over the last decade or more. I'm certain that William asked for her to actually get the time she asked for medical leave, to not be bothered for anything, including photographers. And I believe Prince William is protective of that. I think that King Charles and possibly all the staff too would not only be supportive of that, but advocate for that as well. And King Charles especially would probably also be protective of her in this time to say, do not bother her with anything. When the media speculation increased throughout the last 3 months each time, it had a bit of an ebb and flow to it. They simply have not wanted to bring it up to her, or perhaps forbade staff from doing so. They wanted to stick by her. They wanted to let her be. They wanted to let these things be because, as I said, they are used to these media storms and they know just as well as all of us do when we think about it that it will all blow over anyway. And that's what everybody else should be doing too. Letting her be. Letting her have her medical leave. Showing her the loyalty and respect that she has shown others consistently. There's nothing fishy about that. Furthermore, they've done what any humane or sane employer or friend or spouse would do. And that is to respect someone's medical leave. Fully. Full stop. That means no calling them during their medical leave or emailing them work stuff during their medical leave. I think that's pretty simple. Some might say progressive or normal, appropriate even. Wow. So I see nothing suspicious about not making statements or not having oh, thanks for the well wishes. King Charles made it clear that he was continuing to work while he was undergoing treatment, but had to not do in-person visits, that he was still getting the red box and doing all of those things. So his video that people have referenced, King Charles did a video about his well wishes cards. Why isn't Catherine? Catherine literally took medical leave. No duties. Now, it's been said that she was still doing some work while on bed rest or, working from home a bit, not so much doing active work at that time. But back to the photograph. It, to be fair, could have been a situation where Catherine genuinely intended it to just be put up on Instagram and not released to the media organizations. While it was a mistake that it got released that way, it was a totally normal thing that really did not deserve the frenzy that it caused, no matter how unfortunate it was. It's confirmed that it was sent to staff digitally by Catherine, so the usual conversations and precautions that take place normally were perhaps not because of the new and different circumstances of her being at home at the time. And therefore, she wasn't in person to say, here's the photo, I edited it some, or for those conversations to take place. Because she has consistently been working, all of her staff would also be in somewhat new territory, taking a picture from an email from Catherine and releasing it rather than having that in-person contact. If it had been posted to Instagram and that alone, it would be no big deal because it's a social media thing. The issue arose because the photo had been subsequently released to the media like an official press release update. And that very well could have been a staff member jumping the gun or skipping a protocol due to those circumstances of Catherine being on leave. Once it's been given to the news organizations and released by the palace, it's under different scrutinies that forbid them from running manipulated pictures. This is a safety net against people using AI or other Photoshop to publish fake photographs and actual fake news. So that means literally no manipulations can take place. At most, they're allowed to brighten an image. So that means any and every other edit is not allowed. And this is exactly why sometimes you'll see an embedded Instagram post rather than a photo itself. Like, take a look at these two examples. So this is an example of the newspaper publishing this photograph. It implies that this is the media's picture and it has been verified as an original. It's factual. On the other hand, this is showing you someone else's Instagram post. So it's showing you what someone else published on their private Instagram or official Instagram. That's saying the publishing of this picture is them. It's on them. This is what they published. And they are just embedding it into their article. They are not publishing the picture themselves as their news. This is the key difference. When you see something that's an embedded Instagram shot, then it very well could have been edited. And the news organizations are not responsible because they're just showing you what someone else published. But in these cases where they put the photo up like an official news release or as their picture that they're releasing in a factual way, then it cannot have any sorts of media manipulations done to it. And this is exactly why I think that it's an honest mistake that Catherine didn't realize it would be released to the media as such, that she just thought this is an Instagram post, social media type situation. But regardless of any of that, it's still been blown out of proportion to a ridiculous scale. I do think that it could have been explained, but that could have put the individual who did this, the staff member, in a tight spot. And the rumor is that Catherine is very pleasant to work with and that she and William are very loyal and protective of their staff. So perhaps in this situation, Catherine did not specify this is an Instagram only or that she had edited it. And she didn't want the staff member to get into a tight spot or get called out or in trouble for it either. So she just took the fall for it because she didn't specify it either. One could view that as being a good boss. The picture definitely set off a chain of events. But I do think that Stephen Colbert is guilty of really trudging up the ever unfounded falsehood of an affair involving Prince William and Rose Hanbury. It has always been an absurd piece of malicious gossip. The history of this lie is very suspicious. It is widely believed that Meghan Markle actually came up with this lie and released it to the media at the time. It was not run by very many big, well-respected journals, magazines, or news outlets because it could not be verified in any way, shape, or form. It was run mostly by the cheap tabloids. This was a retaliation story from the Meg. She had gotten bad press and was not permitted to put out counter-narratives. And because of this, the story never gained any traction because there was no truth to it. And then, now, after the photo scandal hit the airwaves, in an attempt to find some salacious gossip or angle to this story, in order to get more views, the writers over at The Daily Show dug deep into old, low-end tabloids and decided it was perfectly fine to put it in Stephen's monologue. But it was not. The woman is on medical leave. Prince William has been a very supportive husband during this time, and as present as humanly possible for his 3 kids, and for his father, who is battling cancer. A family member recently passed away, and they all have gone through a tumultuous time the past few years, starting with Prince Philip, and then Queen Elizabeth, and Harry and Meghan drama, and all of the nonsense coming from Montecito, and the constant barrage of lies and accusations. And on top of it, during a time where there's all these seismic shifts to the monarchy, that this was so far from acceptable that I'm quite disappointed that Stephen Colbert would think it's okay to bring up these rumors, or that other people like Piers Morgan would think it's okay to say that they could be hiding something. There might be something more going on. And no matter how plainly false these things are, it's still painful to know that that's being talked about or said about you or your family. This rumor in particular is something that their kids might read or see or hear. It's extraordinarily irresponsible. As for Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, these Sussex comments on the picture that Meg would never, well, that's laughable because as we have seen, she does Photoshop things and she does heavily edit things. In fact, their Christmas card had its own kill order, if I'm not mistaken, but they were already out of the royal family by the time that happened, so it wasn't as big of a deal to the media. Sadly, this type of comment was to be expected. People like Harry and Meghan cannot pass up the opportunity to take advantage of somebody else's mistake. They just had to leak a comment like that. I honestly was not surprised at all when I saw that. And there's loads of other outlets demonstrating that Harry and Meghan have done a lot of photoshopping on their pictures over the years, but they are not held to the same standards. Quite frankly, media organizations are not interested in any sort of a press release from the Sussexes, so their pictures are not put into news stories the way Catherine and William's are, which means they can Photoshop all they want and post it to social media, and news outlets really don't care to get the picture themselves to put out as an official release. They're just not newsworthy enough, and it just doesn't happen because they are no longer part of the royal family. But even this picture here, you can see Harry's hair is one of the easiest to spot Photoshop moments here, and it's very ironic after he went after Prince William over the issue to see that Harry now, guess it's karma, is suffering his own alarming rate of baldness, I think is what Harold's words were in Spare. So these rumors, conspiracy theories, they're all unfounded, convoluted, and overdone. Some of this was surely expected. People really just need to get a grip. However, the affair lies, the disturbing and cruel imaginings of turmoil within their relationship or their marriage, the constant peddling of they could be hiding something, is disgustingly rude. It's irresponsible journalism. It's unacceptable for their children to have headlines like that that are so far from reality. For the Waleses, who have done such a good job and worked really hard, family first, which many could say is a very moral and good person thing to do. It sets a good example. He is a very involved and hands-on dad. They're both juggling family life and work and seem to be doing a pretty good job of it. They have made genuine positive change for people and organizations. So to be treated this way is shocking in many ways. It very much comes down to making money for the press, but I cannot help but think that much of this is way, way worse because of Harry and Meghan. Their campaign against the royal family not only stressed out the members of the royal family to a great degree, I'm sure, it has created this alternative narrative around the royal family that doesn't add up to what everybody else sees and what the facts show. But regardless, they hammered away at it so much and for so long that it seems to have seeped into the subconscious, the back corner of the minds for some people. So while most people see through it, and even people like Piers Morgan see through it when they think about it, that the Sussexes have lied. It's been proven time and time again that they say whatever they want, and facts be darned. But the accusations of distrust within the firm or warring communications offices or things of that nature from Harry and Meghan has sort of created or opened up the realm for these sorts of comments from unexpected people. And this is exactly what I mentioned several months ago could happen. That the Sussexes invested a few years in attacking the royal family, specific members, the firm in general, all of this. Now they've moved on. But the cloud sort of lingers. And in times like these, it's more obvious the damage that has been done. People who normally wouldn't jump to such wild conclusions, perhaps subconsciously been influenced by this negative media storm of the Sussexes. I can't help but think that it contributed greatly to this whole situation. The only acceptable narrative is that Catherine is on medical leave still. She has been, and there's nothing else happening. There's nothing else newsworthy going on. Everybody around her is doing their best to protect that, respect that, and support it. So they're doing the right thing by not bothering her to make statements or appearances. Anything beyond that is unfair, poor journalism, indirectly the result of Harry and Meghan's pity party crusade, and some might say immoral. But please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me for this update. I will see you next time. I hope you have a very happy day ahead. Bye!